Alright, class, good morning, good morning. Today is our first day learning about figurative language, about just the purpose and types. Our learning target today is that I will be able to define and know the different types of figurative language, and I will be able to test the figurative language by using at least one example. So going through today, we're going to talk about each different figurative language that are out there, and both of you can provide quick examples of figurative language. So if you have any questions, please let me know. We can clarify. Also, take notes that may be able to help you out with later assignments throughout the week. Okay? So figurative language, it is not literal words used in our everyday language. It is a technique that presents meaning without using the figurative language, figural meaning. For example, but like the sun, I still rise. That is an example of figurative language. We also have our different perspective used as literary devices. So just figurative language itself, it just provides a different perspective of the meaning of the content. And it's also used pretty often in written language, and we use it often in spoken language too. So but we may not realize that, but it's quite used very often. So the different types of figurative language, there's various types of figurative language, but today we're just going to focus on the main 5. We got simile, metaphor, personification, idiom, alliteration, and onomatopoeia. There's other types of figurative language, but like I said before, the first, actually 6, my bad, we're going to focus on today. So our first one is simile. It is comparing two unlike things by using the words like or as. It's one of the most common types of figurative language. It helps paint a picture of the concept, but it's not used literally. So a quick example of simile, my baby cousin is cute as a button. Can anyone provide me an example of a simile? Yes, Crystal.
Cool, like a cucumber?
Yes, that is a great example of a simile. Liz, do you want to give a shot of simile?
I had one in mind, but it was inappropriate.
Well, we keep our inappropriate, we'll have to keep it PG in this class, but I'm sure
I'll write it down.
I'm sure that will help you out for later in the week. So metaphor, it is comparing two concepts. It's the opposite of simile. It's not using the words like or as. It's also one of the most common types of figurative language. So also a quick example, Jenny is so hungry she can eat a horse. Jenny is not literally going to eat a horse, but it just means that Jenny is just really hungry. So can anyone provide me an example of a metaphor? Yes, Liz.
On the same theme of horse, like she was quick as a racehorse.
Yes. I mean, good metaphor. Good job. Crystal, do you have a metaphor?
In my mind, I thought of like The Fault in Our Stars and how one of the characters uses he's like it's a metaphor with a cigarette and life, but I don't know how he said it. He said it something else. Ooh, what was it? I'm leaving it. So, I don't know. I was thinking about that.
I mean, you can let me know. You can raise your hand and we can figure that out. But
Okay. Can you give another example of what a metaphor could be besides that one up there?
Another quick one that just popped in my mind, and I think just straight up a dose of inspiration. Literally, it's a metaphor. I'm going to give it pour a spoonful of sugar. That would be a metaphor. If that makes sense.
The first one, a dose of knowledge, that made sense.
Okay, dose of knowledge, now you're totally. All right, so I'm going to quickly move on to the next one. So we got personification is to give a non-human quality, qualities of a human. It could be anything, provides great imagery. So for example, the bear smiled when she found her lost cub. Another quick example is the flowers are dancing. Flowers don't really dance, you're just giving qualities of the flower, the human quality to a flower. Can anyone provide me another example of personification?
The trees are dancing.
Okay, awesome.
Like sometimes when you have really cold or bad food, some people would be like, this hamburger is hard as a rock.
Awesome. And that also would be really good as a simile too, as what the word has. So good job, Liz. So moving on to idioms. We got words or phrases that are not literal. They're meant to take literally. It's common in speech. So an example, the group called it a night after a day, and hang in there, Ella would be another example of an idiom. So literally, when it's the sentence, the group called it a night after a long day, the group is gonna fall asleep, is going to sleep. But anyone want to give a quick example? And this may be a little tougher.
Yeah.
Hold your horses.
That could be an example, yes. So, I mean, it's okay. Like I said, idioms, it is a little tough to come up with one on the spot, but I'm sure later in the week you'll come up with one, or you can see one throughout the examples. So we've got alliteration, also the repetition of the same letter with the same sound, and using two or more words or syllables. So for example, a winding, whining, wonderful world would be an alliteration. Or like Peppa Pig pets Peter the dog. Pets Peter would be an alliteration because you got the P's going on.
Okay, that just reminded me of like that nursery rhyme, Peter Piper picked up pepper. Or I don't even know what it is. But I'm going to use that as my example.
No, totally. And that is a really good example of alliteration. So,
Okay.
yes.
What about Sally the sassy snake?
Yes. I like that, yes.
Okay, cool.
So, keep as alliterations. And then we also have, I believe this is our last one, onomatopoeia, a word that imitates the sound, object, or action it belongs to. So just when you, onomatopoeia itself can be a little tough to understand, but just a couple questions when you think about animal sounds. What do you think of? And when you think about voices, what do you think of? So for example, Kenny munched on her torta, just munching. The word munch would be considered an onomatopoeia. Or Leo and Nina hissed at the vet. Or like another, sometimes it'd be also great example, like some great examples, if you can't think of any right away, would be like boom, pow, like some of those comic words when you look at a comic and you see like scenes that go like boom, pow, bang, those words. Can anyone give me an example of an onomatopoeia?
Stomping.
Stomping now.
Yeah.
You're like, that would be.
Okay, I don't know if this is in the same category, but with that and stomping, it reminds me a lot of like children's books because there's a certain children's story that has like a creature living under the bridge and they're going to go to blow a house down or something like that, right? And they're going over the bridge and every time in this children's book they say trip, trap, trip,
Yes.
trap, right? And that's like stomp, stomp, stomp,
Yes.
stomp. And there's no trip trap. If you heard it anywhere else and it wasn't in that context, you wouldn't know that it's somebody stepping.
Yes.
But since it's repeated in that book, you know that they're walking over the bridge. So
Yes, so
Yeah.
stomp would be considered as onomatopoeia, and then trip trap would be considered
yeah.
as onomatopoeia. Good job, both of you.
I feel like that one makes more sense because like, one, obviously it's from a book, and so like, we already are aware of that, but also like, because they mentioned it's goats, and like,
Yes,
that's the
it's
sound of
goats.
like.
So now that we both understand and provide great definitions of and examples of figurative language, I'm just gonna let you all know tomorrow we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna apply it within our readings. So I'm gonna give you all some sample readings tomorrow, and then from there you can find the different various figurative language, and we'll go from there. And our learning target, we achieved our learning target by defining and knowing the different types of figurative language and then providing at least one example. So, yes.